the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again, they can never have a nuclear weapon.
President Trump for his historical leadership. I spoke with him again this morning, and I would like to thank him and bless him for this close collaboration. It has truly reached the record of all times, an alliance in peace and in war. And this war will bring about true peace. We targeted those at the head of the leadership of the Brotherhood of the Revolutionary Guard and all of General Staff and others. We would like to thank the brave Iranian people that they are being freed of those horrific ties with that regime. This is an opportunity. Do something. Do not sit with your arms crossed, because this moment will come and you will be demanded to go out to the streets in the masses, because you have to complete this work and you have to bring down and eradicate this regime. Your suffering and your sacrifice will not be in vain. We promised you the help, and the help has arrived.
The Prime Minister of Israel speaking directly to the Iranian people, calling them the lion, and President Trump also, at the end of his overnight comments, directly speaking to the Iranian people, telling them that their future
against Iran. Well, they used a devastating tactic called time on target. With 2 aircraft carriers and a fleet of destroyers, they calculated the exact math so Israeli jets and U.S. cruise missiles hit their marks at the exact same second. Israel's main goal is assassinating Khamenei and the top leadership, while the U.S. pounded military targets and other high-value industry. But why did Iranian air defenses fail to activate? Because the U.S. fights with a different kind of technology using electronic warfare from space, sea, and air. They completely blinded the Iranian radar just as destroyers launched a swarm of cruise missiles to wipe out the anti-air systems. But wait, the war is still not over. Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles and drones, so they hit American and Middle East allied bases, and right now, almost everyone is an open target. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a major coordinated military offensive against Iran. Israeli officials have called their offensive Operation Roar of the Lion, while the U.S. operation has been referred to as Operation Epic Fury. The message behind the Israel and U.S. strike was clear. This wasn't just a show of force. This was a targeted move to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran. As stated, this wasn't just a random military strike. The ultimate target was the supreme leader's own compound. Missiles dialed in on highly sensitive areas. We're talking specifically around University Street, the Jamhuri district, and near Pasteur Street. If you know the layout of Tehran, you know exactly what this means. This zone isn't just another neighborhood. It is the absolute nerve center of the Iranian government. It houses the primary, day-to-day offices of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But here's the catch. The IDF says they got him. An Iranian military says Khamenei was not inside his offices when the missiles actually made an impact. The strike may have leveled the compound, but the target slipped away. And right now, the entire region is holding its breath waiting to see what happens next. But reports says Israel says Khamenei's body has been found and he is confirmed dead. Listen, that first wave? It didn't hold back, not even a little. We're talking about a perfectly synchronized, overwhelming assault. The entire goal was to blind and cripple the regime all at once. First, they hit Karaj, just completely ripping through their critical industrial and aerospace hubs. Then, Tehran, the capital, rocked. Any illusion of safety they had was just completely shattered. They didn't stop there. They struck Qom, sending absolute shockwaves right through the ideological heart of the country. And if you follow this stuff, you know exactly how heavily fortified that area is. Over in the west, missiles literally rained down on Kermanshah. They neutralized those launch sites before the operators could even think about powering up their radars. And then there's Isfahan, the absolute crown jewel of their nuclear and drone programs. Heavily defended, didn't matter, it just lit up the night sky. But how did the US and Israel actually pull off a preemptive strike on Iran? First of all, look at this map. To make this happen, they didn't just rely on local land bases. They brought two massive floating cities right to Iran's doorstep. Down in the Arabian Sea, you've got the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group bearing down on the south and east. And over in the eastern Mediterranean, the biggest, newest ship, USS Gerald R. Ford. While Israeli jets flew all the way across the Middle East to reach Iranian airspace, timing was absolutely critical. The moment those IDF jets reached their marks, the missiles were released. And that brings us to the most terrifying, complicated part of this entire operation, the synchronization. Military planners rely on a tactic called time on target. Look at this map. You have missiles firing from submarines, cruise missiles launching from escort ships, and massive payload drops from stealth bombers. They are all deploying from completely different locations at entirely different times. But here is the genius of it. The US military machine was mathematically choreographed so everything impacted Karaj, Tehran, Qom, Kermanshah, and Isfahan at the exact same second the Israeli jets dropped their guided bombs. It was designed to be a total systemic shock and explodes at the same time. A move to collapse the regime instantly. When those munitions finally hit, it was pure shock and awe. But why did the Iranian air defenses fail to activate? Well, to put it simply, the US military operates in a completely different league. Using a highly advanced mix of electronic warfare and cyber operations, coordinated from space to the ground, the coalition was able to inject false data directly into Iranian radar screens. Top-tier Iranian air defense systems, like their homegrown Baver and their Russian-supplied batteries, were absolutely overwhelmed by this electronic assault. But to actually hunt them down, the US set a brilliant trap. They launched hundreds of ABM-160 MALDs, miniature air-launched decoys. To a panicked Iranian radar operator staring at a chaotic screen, these tiny drones look exactly like a massive squadron of F-15s or F-16s screaming toward the capital. With the door kicked wide open, fifth-generation stealth fighters, including both US and Israeli F-35s with possible F-22 Raptors, sliced through the airspace completely undetected. Ultimately, the Iranian air defense network wasn't just suppressed, it was completely dismantled, at least for the time period. Because the Iranian do have a huge firepower. Tehran has fired back. At Operation Truthful Promise 4, a massive wave of missiles and drones just targeted U.S. bases in Israel. Here's the fallout. The UAE's Al Dhafar air base was hit, leaving one dead from shrapnel. In Bahrain, the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet HQ was directly targeted. Qatar's air defenses successfully wiped out incoming missiles, while Kuwait locked down its entire airspace under heavy fire. Meanwhile, nationwide sirens are blasting across Israel, with massive mid-air interceptions lighting up the skies over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. If you don't want your phone and emails to get compromised like that, you should get this military managed to fly all the way to Iran. At 9 in the morning, Israel launched more than a dozen aircraft, but it's a complicated process. They have to navigate or entirely bypass the airspace of neighboring countries like Syria and Iraq. To avoid hostile air defenses, defense analysts estimate the actual flight distance to reach central Iran is between 930 and 1,240 miles each way. Although these routes may seem straightforward, they involve complex planning, including calculations for air refueling and coordinating attack aircraft to pass through Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. Israel and U.S. strategy was to attack Iran in 3 waves. The first wave targeted surface air-to-air sites, radar installations, and Iran's air defense headquarters in Tehran, Elam, and Khuzestan. The second wave focused on destroying ballistic missiles, and finally, the third wave targeted military manufacturing industries,